Tom, we're here, but I'm not on Clubhouse yet. I'm trying to figure that out. So let's
We're
maybe you could start the room. Or
we're
is there
live. It's not giving me the option to start the room.
a new event today, 10:30? Oh, time zone issue.
Oh, no, not time zone. We jumped ahead.
And it,
And Clubhouse
okay,
didn't keep up.
weird. Okay. Let's see now.
But
Let's try this again. Okay, people say
but yeah, I don't know how to it
edit
doesn't give me the option to even start the room.
edit event.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you go.
Okay, a time zone issue today. Now,
Nope,
now
not time zone.
Clubhouse.
No, not time zone. Not time zone. Daylight savings time.
Yeah, that's what I meant. But
Yeah,
it's
but
weird. They
yeah, but,
just
yeah, but that's not the same thing.
that's true. Okay. Let's start this. Okay, I'm muting myself here. Let's do it.
Let me see if I can get. Oh, there we go. Now I can join.
Okay, Tom's coming in here. This is not the smartest guys in the room. We had a daylight savings time issue today, Tom. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people talking about getting rid of daylight savings time, and I'm on board with it. I think, and actually, it was funny, like just in our personal lives. The other day, Becky and I think it was Sunday evening. It was like well after 7 o'clock. We usually have dinner, try to have dinner sometime close to 7. Just for timing wise, when Becky likes to go to bed, she doesn't want to eat too close to bedtime, et cetera, whatever. You don't need all the details there. But anyway, we try to eat dinner usually around 7 o'clock, right? Is the point of that story. And it was like 7:30 something. And both of us were like, I guess we should start dinner. And then we realized that now this was like within 24 hours of the time change, but then we realized that it was much later than we thought it was, and it was because we hadn't gotten accustomed to the daylight yet. So it's later, much later, which is kind of nice, but it also threw us for a loop. The other problem too is that it messes with a lot of people's sleep, and people who have sleep disorders kind of suffer at this time of year, twice a year, right? In the spring and in the fall when the clocks change. And then the other side of it is that actually there is a correlation between the clocks changing and increases in mortality rates. It actually, people die around the times of the clocks changing for a variety of reasons. But I think actually one of the weird sort of correlations is, I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering this correctly, I'm pretty sure that the incidence of heart attacks goes up. Which is a kind of a surprising correlation. And again, correlation is not causation, but surprising correlation. Yeah, I don't know. All of that is to say, get rid of it. Stop changing the clocks. It's silly. We don't need to do it anymore.
Yeah, it was odd, and it's odd. Clubhouse fell for why something that we've had scheduled for a year did it change to 10:30, and we did nothing. Mr. Swift, vote yay or nay on time change, or not time change, daylight savings.
Get rid of it. There's no need for it.
Silliness.
Get rid of it. It really is not necessary in these times. I mean, I understand, I think, why they did it back when they started, but there's no need for it now. So, yeah, do away with it. It's one less thing that two less things people have to worry about.
Yeah, that's for sure, man. All right, one of the things we're going to talk about today is messaging, branding. What is your brand's message? Are you on that? Are you following that message? Tom used the word ethos. Tell me about ethos, Tom.
I mean, by ethos, I'm really talking about the core values of the organization, right? So getting right to sort of what the sort of the pillar is that the organization stands on. And I think the core ethos of any organization is crucial. And that ultimately I disagree with the sort of the Friedman School of Economic Theory, I don't think that the core ethos or the mission of every organization should be to solely benefit the shareholders. I think it should be to solve a problem, right, and to make the world better, right? And that means that can mean a lot of different things. That could mean everything from the products you manufacture improving the lives of their users to to the philanthropic work that your organization does benefiting the community that you're a part of directly. So it can mean a lot of different things, but I think at when you get down to it, when you dig in, for any organization, the core value of that organization, the core mission of that organization should be to improve the community, improve the world, and not just make money for shareholders. And I believe that because I think it makes a better world for all of us. I think it's a better place to live. But I also believe it because it literally saves lives. It literally saves people's lives if the core values of the organization or the business or the company are to better the community, to improve the lives of the members of its community. And there's a million examples. We were talking about a couple right before we got on. Obvious examples like in the pharmaceuticals industry, when we talk about Martin Shkreli and his purchase of that AIDS drug, and then we talk about the opioid crisis, right, which was propagated by profit-hungry pharmaceutical organization, specifically one profit-hungry pharmaceutical organization whose name is escaping me right now, but that family,
Purdue.
What was it?
Purdue.
Yeah, Purdue Pharmaceuticals. Exactly. Not the chicken, the drugs. But yeah, I mean the Purdue family and Purdue Pharmaceuticals, it's not the Purdue family. I forget. Anyway, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, they basically created the opioid crisis. And why'd they do it? Because they wanted money. Right? Because they valued profit above all else, because at the end of the day, they treated their customers, their consumers, their community like dollars and cents on a spreadsheet, like data points, on a spreadsheet, like dollars and cents on a P&L. And it made their shareholder meetings go well because everybody was excited because they were making money hand over fist. And everybody forgot that at the other end of that transaction, or those transactions, and that exchange, that flow of money, were real human beings who were dying because of their greed. And they're not the only example. One that has sort of recently in the past couple of weeks kind of come into mind for me, because of the work of John Oliver and his show Last Week Tonight on Max or I'm just going to call it HBO because I think it should be called HBO. But his show, he talked about Boeing a couple of weeks ago, and in very real terms, Boeing's shift in leadership and move away from engineering first and quality first mentality and ethos literally killed people. And it's a very clear chain of events that you can chart and track and draw clean lines between, that when the core ethos, when the leadership changed that organization and the core ethos changed that organization, people ended up dying as a result. And it's a problem. It's a big problem.
I sat with a consultant the other day doing some nonprofit work, and he came down to, he asked this question: is your message beyond reproach? Your ethos, your organization, is that core message beyond reproach? And so let's say in my case, we were aiming to, we at this organization, Feeding the Spirit, we feed 10,000 people a year, house 1,000, pay the rent of 1,000, help them with bus, help the community get bus tickets, clothing. But without a clear message, you could, even though we're doing so much good, trying to do so much good, you could say that message is not beyond reproach. Well, how could you say that? Because people might say, well, you helped the drug addict, or you helped this person who could have got a job, you helped this person. So, if the message is restoring human dignity, okay, that is a message that is beyond reproach. Like let's say Southwest Airlines flying people at an affordable price, or what, I don't know what their core message is, but if you could get behind something, let's say let's say Motivation Champs, if I'm thinking about this, we're the world of negativity, or that's like taking Tom's message, okay, I'm going to shoot. Well, that is something that nobody could argue that, no, we should have more negativity. We should, like, I think we could all break down our message and get it that concise that you're doing good at its root, and then you don't start putting profits before people. So let's get, Mr. Swift, when you make a video or write a book, how do you know that each time, do you set out with a certain mission, or you turn on the camera and say F it, and how do you make sure that you don't just turn on the camera and say F it?
Well, no, I mean, there has to be some thought behind everything you do, so I mean, some things you think a little deeper on. I really turn on the camera and just say F it without thinking of the statement and message I want to make. Do I do a deep dive into what are people going to think of it? No, not a ton, because as long as I feel I'm on message, I'm not here to please everybody, and you can't. It's impossible. You want to please everybody, go sell ice cream, and I don't sell ice cream. So I'm okay with people either not liking it or having a different opinion. That's like, you said, Dom, people could take what you do in your nonprofit world the wrong way. It's going to happen. And you know what? You can't worry about those people, because overall, when you look in the mirror, what you're doing is the right thing. And that's what you can control. So, I think it's important to make sure what you write is kind of down the right line. But to get that bent and worried about it, I just don't have time for, because you're never going to please everybody, and there's always somebody out there that can say something. And Tom, I agree with you about companies today. Making shareholders money should not be one of maybe the first two things companies should be doing. And when you look at, the greed that's happened in the corporate world, I mean, outside of the examples you set, it's so deep, it's saddening, the greed that has turned probably a lot of good people into straying from maybe what they started their mission on. And I mean, that goes so deep into so many industries. I mean, we just, saw it, and, the pharmaceutical world is plagued with it, but they're not the only ones. I mean, go to the investment industries like BlackRock, and the power surge and the greed that people have out there that are running these companies is unfortunately out of control. I'm complete.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Brian. I think, I think it is it is an issue that is the result of, and what you see when you allow sort of an, I don't know. I don't know that I like the term, but I think it's the closest term to that I have that kind of makes sense. But when you talk about like unfettered capitalism, right? Like capitalism itself is a good system. I believe in capitalism. I am a capitalist, but I believe that capitalism unfettered, like anything else, unfettered, without sort of guideposts, becomes a problem, becomes problematic, right? Like it's the idea that too much of a good thing is a bad thing, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, I think, unfettered capitalism, where the sole purpose and the exercise of decision making in pursuit of that purpose is to make money for investors and shareholders. You end up in situations where lives matter less than dollars, and that's a big problem for me. It's one of the reasons why, I have this mission, as Dom was talking about, like, come up with a mission, or distill your mission down to something that is beyond reproach. I believe mine is, right. I have this mission to humanize the world of business, right. I think that's beyond reproach. I don't think anybody is going to stand on a soapbox and argue back to me that business should be less human, right? That we should treat people less like human beings. I don't think anybody could reasonably argue that. And I would say to anyone who did try to argue that they were an idiot for deciding to die on that hill, because that's exactly what would end up happening. But yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Even when we're talking about ice cream, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. And I love your message. And I agree. It's beyond reproach. And if it isn't in somebody's mind, it is what it is. Like you said, there's always that person out there, or that group. And I think at the end, we've got to be able to look in the mirror and be okay with what we're continually doing. I don't know how much of this world gets up and looks at themselves and smiles with where we've gone. But all we could do, like you and Dom and probably everybody here, is controlling what we can control and hoping that spreads and becomes a bigger cause for good.
Right on, Swifty. Appreciate you. I don't think I said yet that this is not the smartest guys in the room, because we had daylight savings issues at the beginning of today's room. I apologize. All right, not the smartest guys in the room. John Jay in the house. Marcella, Gary, Brandon, April. Want to come up? Raise your hand. We'll pull you up too. We always invite everybody up, and then we always go from left to right when we're talking. You may see me and Tom on another platform coming soon. Tom, we might try it out one of these days and see what's going on over there, using other multiple platforms to communicate. Okay.
We have. Do you want to tease that, Dom? Is that the?
I feel comfortable teasing that.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about moving this over to LinkedIn audio. We've run into a number of problems, I think, in the last 6 months or so, not the least of which that people have told us that it is very hard to find this room, that it's very hard to find, that they don't get alerted to it. They don't know when it's happening. That people have told us that they used to love coming and they can't find it anymore. So we've talked about moving over to LinkedIn audio. Both of us think that there's some opportunity there to bring this to a broader audience, maybe try to grow the community that we're all a part of, help more people, find more answers, which is kind of the mission that we started with, was, invite a bunch of brilliant people into a space and use that sort of that group mind, or the minds of the members of that group, to help answer questions and provide insights for people looking for answers. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity on LinkedIn audio. We've talked about it offline, and it's something we're definitely looking into, and maybe doing some test runs of in the near future. So keep your eyes peeled. We'll try to let everybody know when we're going to start doing some test runs and seeing what we can work out. We have to figure out some logistics, some tech stuff.
Yeah.
I have to figure out some tech stuff, I should say. And then maybe we'll go from there. But does that sum it up, Dom?
Yeah, that's good. It's good. And just teasing it, starting it, trying it out. I've done some rooms over there and enjoy it. I think it's antiquated, so I love my Clubhouse. I think Clubhouse is a little easier to come up on stage, a little easier to use, but the daily usage of the platforms is, this one here is getting 100th of the other platforms. So I'm a believer in first to market. Maybe we all go over there and try it and are the first ones doing this kind of thing on that platform. So not the smartest guys in the room. As we go on here, one of the things we're talking about today is messaging. How many people make a video, write a book, or start writing a book, start making a video, start a Clubhouse room, and have no idea, no guide rails on what they're going to talk about? And you jump in and there's no direction and there's dead air. I hate dead air. Okay, so sorry. Dr. Tachi, when making a video, are you thinking about what you're going to say first? You have a plan, how long you're going to do it? When do you have thoughts on people that are just making random videos, walking down the street and have no thought on where they're going? I have a friend, super positive dude. He'll just start making, like, it'll be a 30-minute video where it never goes anywhere. And I want to support it. I don't have 30 minutes to get to whatever point the guy's going to make. So that's my thoughts. Dr. Tachi, what do you think?
Yeah, all of that. Good morning, everyone. So for me, it really depends. Most of the time, what I'm doing is planned. I have a running list of topics that I want to tackle, and either my Be More Ers and obviously with Mediascope, it's current media tech and pop culture news, so it kind of writes itself. But when I do the Be More I have a list of the things that I want to talk about. It will be either something that I noticed in pop culture that relates to how you can make your videos and live streams better, or just something in media in general that I saw that I want to talk about. So I usually do have a list. Now, is there room in the space for the random video? Yeah, I think there is. But usually for me, I would have thought about it first. And that's usually when you see me in the car because something struck me. And then I'm like, okay, I have to park and talk about this. But I've thought about it, for a few minutes before I did it. Now, to just get on, I think there's room in the space for that. But eventually, people want some more substance beyond just seeing you, just being there to support you. I can only support for so long before it becomes a waste of time. And this, I'm only speaking for me. So I think there is room in the space for the random video. But if you're going to do those types of things, I don't think that you need to do them all the time. Well, let me backtrack. If you are looking to build a brand or you're trying to be serious about video, there has to be some level of planning and consistency um, there so that people get used to seeing you. So if that's what your goal is, then you need to be consistent, and it doesn't need to be a random pop-up thing, because then I don't know when you're coming on. However, if it's just for you to have fun, then go ahead and have at it. But you should also not expect to have huge, overwhelming audiences when your videos go to the abyss of nowhere because they're not planned. Every once in a while, it's fine to do a pop-up because you thought about something, you're somewhere you want to show people, and that's fine. But if you're serious about it, there has to be at least some level of planning and consistency. And this is my opinion. I release.
Dr. Tachi, so if you are somewhere interesting and you make a video, isn't that, well, one, you planned it, it's probably on message, and there's something unique or something behind you. I think that is acceptable. I'm saying, people, what do you think about people that are like, I have to go live today, so I'm going live, and then it seems like that's my beef is that I got it. Somebody told me I need to do live, so all of a sudden they go live and just sit there looking at you, or hey, what's going on? I'm not going anywhere here. That's where I'm really, like, my time seems to be, I have infinite, what do they say? I only have so much time in my life. And what do you think about that?
Okay, so yeah, no. If you're only doing lives because someone told you needed to go live and you have no plan, it's not really going anywhere. Um, it can be a waste of time for some people. I've seen some people that, and again, that comes with their kind of planning, like they just pop up, but they may have an update or whatever. But if they're just getting on because somebody said they had to go live, then better for you not to go live, because then what starts happening, I find this with me, there are some people that they go live, but I just can't. I may pop in to say hi and then I leave because I already know it's going to be a waste of time, because they sit there and wait for everybody to come. Okay, we're just going to wait for a few more people to come in. What about me? I was here on time. Am I chopped liver? So that type of thing. So going back to your thing, there is an art to going live. And the way you learn to go live is by watching others and then going live yourself. But if you find that there is never any growth in the lives, then for me, it's a waste of time. So I agree with you.
Yeah, I think you're dead right there, Dr. Tachi. I think one of the things that often people don't or kind of miss, I think, in the equation as they're doing what Dom talks about when they decide to go live just because they want to go live, is they don't actually even ask themselves the most pertinent question that they should be asking themselves that someone else will ask, like that every viewer, right? Everybody who comes across their content online is going to ask, right? And the question is, why? Right? Like everybody watching is going to go, why am I watching this? Like not necessarily consciously. They're not necessarily going to sit there and like actually go through the process of trying to examine why, but they're going to think it, right? Our brains are wired that way to make decisions as to whether or not we should continue doing something that we're doing, right? And especially in a world where we're inundated by content, right? Where we're just having stuff thrown at us, projectile vomited at us by the internet, in a nonstop fashion. You have to answer that question for people. And so if you don't know why you're going live or you're pressing record on the video that you're making, then stop, right? Just don't do it until you can answer that question. And it doesn't have to be a world changing answer. It could be, hey, I'm in this cool place and I wanted to share it with everybody because I think it's beautiful. Like, okay, that works, right? So now you know what you should be talking about when you go live. Now you know what you should be talking about when you press record, right? Because you asked yourself, why am I doing this, right? What is the purpose? What's the point? What do I want to share? As long as you have that, I say go for it, right? And you're going to end up attracting the audience you want to attract. But yeah, at the end of the day, and the other thing too that you said, and obviously I believe this, I say this all the time. It's one of the sort of key directives in my book. Legendeering is consistency is key, right? So I 100% agree with you on the consistency part too. If you're going to do it regularly, right? Do it daily, do it weekly, do it bi-weekly, whatever you're going to do, right? But do it regularly. But yeah, I mean, just answer that question. Just ask yourself before you hit record, before you turn the camera on, before you point it at yourself, before you even load the platform where you're thinking about going live, just ask yourself why you're doing it. And if you have a good answer for it, then I say go for it, right? But if you don't have a good answer, then save it.
Good stuff, Tom. Dr. Todd, how do you know when to stop? Both anybody, you two go on first. Dr. Tachi, Tom, because they linger. So some people would stop because there's nobody on yet. Let's say today when I got in Clubhouse, I was here by myself. Okay. Or if I'm doing a video, maybe at the end people fall off and I got things to say, or maybe there's 20 people still there and 20 people, I'm so happy about it, I want to keep going. How do I know when to stop?
For you, or you're just saying in general?
In general.
Okay. I think so. There's such a thing as, and some people don't get the art of exhaustiveness, but this is why you need to plan. When you plan what you're going to say, even if it's, I'm just in a cool place and I wanted to show you this, not everybody can get a feeling of when things are supposed to end. Like I can feel when things are complete and are supposed to end because I've done it for so long. However, you need to look at what's happening, read the room, look at the audience. If they're not as responsive anymore, maybe it's time for you to end. Plan ahead of time and say, these are the 3 points that I'm going to cover. And when these 3 points are complete, maybe I'll give 5 minutes for you all to say something and then I'll end. So for somebody who's not used to feeling when things are supposed to end, they have to plan a certain number of things that they're going to say and then end. You have to be that strict with yourself if you don't know or don't understand when to end. Another thing too, again, read the room. If you notice that people are dropping off, if you notice that people are dropping off because you've been there on there for a long time. Look and see, okay, how long have I been on there? You also have to monitor, how long have I been on here? Is it too long? And there's no rule per se, but I would say for live, you really don't want anything over 1 hour per se, with exceptions. Obviously, something like this is an hour and a half. It's planned. This is what the people that come in the room know, and it's accepted that we're going to be here for an hour and a half, and that's what we know. But if you're the type of person that just pops up whenever, you can't expect me to sit there with you for 2 hours with no plan. So I know that was all a way around and round about the place, but the point is that you have to plan, have a number of things that you're going to say, especially if you're not used to knowing when to end. Once that has exhausted, then let it go. If people are leaving or it seems like it's been too long, end the stream. Give yourself a time limit to begin with. Say, you know what? I'm going to do 30-minute streams and this is what I'm going to stick to, or 45-minute streams and this is what I'm going to stick to. Or in the morning, let's do something 20 minutes. Stick to that time limit and people will be okay with it, I think.
I think that makes sense. I'll take it from my perspective, right? So Dr. Tachi was kind of taking it from a live perspective. I'll take it from my perspective on the sort of recorded video side. From my thinking, from my point of view, the thing that people run into, the problem that people run into is that when you're recording video, especially if you're doing it sort of selfie style, right? You're recording yourself. You're not getting any direct feedback, right? And what we're used to, what we spend most of our time doing when we talk is speaking in conversation with other people, right? So you get feedback in conversation and most of us don't really pay attention to it, right? Our brain sort of filters it out, but it happens all the time. And I'm going to mention it and I'm going to suggest that you pay attention to it. And the next time you're in a one-on-one conversation with somebody, you're going to notice it, right? What happens is that the people we're talking to give us feedback. They say, yep, right, okay, gotcha, right? All those kind of little cues, those little verbal cues that they understand and are hearing what we're saying to them, right? And we do it all the time. We don't even necessarily realize we're doing it. But what happens is when somebody's in a recorded format where they're not getting that feedback is they just keep talking to fill the silence. And what you're doing is you over-explain in an effort to solicit a response that never comes. So what I've always taught people, and I've done, I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands of interviews for different video platforms and for television over the course of my career. The thing that I always tell people when I'm sitting them down for an interview, one of the things that I tell them a bunch of stuff, but one of the things that I always tell people is, I'm not going to give you those verbal cues. So when you're finished with your statement, put a period on it. Don't be afraid to be declarative, right? Don't be wishy-washy. Don't feel like you have to run around the bush and give me 1,000 reasons for, like, just make the statement, put a period on the end of the sentence, and then we'll move on. I'll ask the next question. But there's always going to be a pause between when you finish speaking and when I ask a question, right? And it's because the way I always say it is, and this is like become part of my sort of pat routine, right? Is the thing that I always say is, because nobody cares about what I have to say. We're here to listen to you. And so just remember that whenever you're recording a video, you're not going to get that verbal feedback. So put a period on it. Be declarative. And when you've made your statement, you can finish. The other thing that's nice is be cognizant of the platform you're making the video for, right? So if you're recording an Instagram reel, the time limit is 90 seconds, right? So if you're recording a reel for Instagram and you know the time limit is 90 seconds, then when you start recording, you got less than 90 seconds, right? From the time you start recording. So try to wrap it up in less than 90 seconds. And as you practice that, you'll get better and better at making short, clear, declarative statements and recording those 90-second videos and putting a period on it and not droning on forever and ever, like I just did, explaining how not to drone on forever and ever. And now back to you, Dom.
Yeah, there you go. At that point where you drone on forever and ever, you pitch it to me. I always and you guys, you can tell me what you think about this, but with authors when they're doing interviews, I always tell them talking sound bites. You know, short 30-second answers. If the host wants more, the host will ask, and rather than host asks, "Well, where'd you get your start?" Shit, and then they go back to, well, in 1982 this happened, and I'm like, uh-oh, timeline question. They're gonna take me 30 years right now. All right, let's get to Jason, man. Jason, how you been? I go in Jason's rooms. Jason, how do you know you're on message? What is message? How do you know you're not hanging around too long? Then after we get to Jason, we're gonna go to John, Phil. We got some comments here from our friend Chris, so that's what's going on. Jason, what say you? And you got a new picture. I'm like, you're not Irish, are you? Look at
Yeah,
there's
half.
no way. You're Irish?
Yeah, my mom is.
Okay, so he's got I say that like holiday green shirt on here today. I like looking at people's profiles pictures. Okay, go on, Jason. Sorry.
I mean, I create daily rooms with creating curiosity. Sometimes I just want to talk to fill in time when I'm driving, and there's other times where I have something exactly in mind to talk about, but I don't have an end game in it because, the platform is built on conversation and ideas. And there's times where you express yourself clearly, and there's times you're trying to find the right point in what you're saying while you're explaining. So you got to know, you know, when you're on a thought, make sure it connects to a human being that they could understand. You don't understand that, you don't control that. So you have to always pull yourself back. But there's points where you reach in a conversation, say like on Clubhouse, where it's dead air. And it's like, you know what? When it's too much dead air, it's like, hey everybody, I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna cut the conversation, and we'll be back next time. That's amicable. That's it's like, hey, we've reached a spot where people use this as a fill-in, for noise, or they want comfort of conversation instead of what they're doing on a screen, or an activity that requires or that has too much quiet around it. People like activity in so many different facets. So when you're going on live stream on a regular basis for video, it's best if you have something in mind and that you're going to present. But TikTok and IG lives and many more are proving that there are a lot of people who don't have an end game, who they go on, they talk random things, and people just pay attention. And it's a weird phenomenon. So I don't have all the answers. I'm not an expert on that, but this is just what I notice. So that's all I got to say.
All right, hang around, man. Let's dig in on this. So I'm reading. Let me look. I'm gonna get closer to my screen here. Maybe I need glasses. All right, I'm reading Chris's comments. Chris Fraze. I wonder, like Jay-Z, Saze, Fraze. Okay.
Phrase.
Chris Fraze. I like
Not
Fraze.
phrase. Just phrase.
Like Jay-Z, Shaze. Okay. Fraze.
Yeah, it's not phrase.
It's
phrase.
Okay. Fraze says phrase. I mess with him. All right. He says, end on a high note. I love this idea of ending on a high note. I think everything, every line, and then his next thing, he says, first rule of comedy. Okay, I got to go around. I have my thing here to read this. First rule of comedy in live broadcast: always leave them wanting more. The George Costanza. If anybody watches Seinfeld, that was George's thing. Always leave them wanting more. So, 100% agree. I think for me, it's get off. If I accomplished what I set out to accomplish in room, in video, I am running for the hills most of the time. And even sometimes you might see it's 11:05, and we wrap up. What do? We do an hour and a half. So even in this clubhouse, we could have, this room could be bumping and it's 11:08 and I'm like, I have nothing left. Let's get the hell out of here. And we could be in the middle of the conversation. And that's partly because I think we promised you, like Tachi said, we're going to do an hour and a half. We're going to give you the best hour and a half we can. And after that, it's time to go. We'll do it again another week, but I don't want to overstretch or over shoot the runway. So Chris says Chris says that's not a rule. That's not a rule. That's talent. Can I suggest a virtual hook for the audience? What the hell's a virtual hook, Chris? Tell me more. So Chris is commenting here. He says a virtual hook. What do you mean here, Chris? Virtual hook. All right. So we'll get back to that. John Jay, how do you leave them wanting more? How do you deal with dead air? Go on.
First of all, dead air in the radio world is a death knell. You don't want that at all. It's horrible. So,
hey, John, do people get fired for that? Like sometimes
yeah.
So like the people that are supposed to play the commercials, that's not you all the time. Does somebody else play them?
No, that's done by automation. But if you don't trigger the next element to occur, if you go live and you talk and you don't trigger the next element to occur, it's on you, the board operator, the DJ. So, yeah, you do enough, you're going to get fired. So the number one thing is I look at what's the motivation for doing this. Number one thing always has to be for me with any content I create is respecting the time of the consumer. So to get into it immediately with what's in it, I mean, little setup, but you got to get Chris said the hooks in there immediately. So if you do video, which I don't do much of, understand the length is important. And this is something Tom could talk about. Typically in the United States, hour-long television shows without commercials are 37 to 42 minutes long. That's an hour-long show. 30-minute shows are 18 to 21 minutes long. So why are people doing this? If you're doing it for self-gratification, to feel important, whatever it might be, you're probably on the wrong foot. Turn your attention towards what's in it for the consumer, and make sure that you set with a hook or an invite what they're going to get out of it. Start that. You tease that throughout, and then at the end you give it to them. And if you want to tease with what's coming up next, great. That's an awesome way to do it. We have plenty of examples of this in the radio world. You'll hear them say at 7:15, "Hey, we're giving away concert tickets to see Chicago in concert at 8:15. Make sure you are ready to call in." That's a tease. It's all designed to get people to listen longer, to consume your content longer. That's just an example. But I would say this: the number one thing that people need to consider is having respect for the time of your consumer. If you put you first, they're going to put you last. Thank you.
Right on, Mr. John Jay. Think about that. You are one of these people that is always listener first, right? Never, like you say, never about you. It's listener first. It's so obvious, man. Good job.
Can I, Dom? Can I share a funny share a story?
Please do.
It's funny to me anyway, but I think you guys will appreciate it. John will probably get a chuckle out of it. So I was on the radio when I was in college. I had a radio show, and both of my roommates had radio shows as well. And one of my roommates had a terrible time for his radio show. He was at, I think it was 6 a.m. on Sunday mornings, right? Which for a college radio station, there is no one listening. And so he was also on the crew team, and they were traveling that weekend for a meet, a match. I don't know what you call it in crew. They were rowing boats in a river. Anyway, and he asked our other roommate and I to cover his radio show. So we decided no one's listening. It's like 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I think we had gotten like an hour or two of sleep, and then we went over to the radio station and decided to play the soundtrack from The Sound of Music, and provide commentary and in some cases sing along with it. And then because we had it in the library, the radio station had it in the library for some reason. And so we did that. And at one point we just left it playing and decided to go out for a cigarette. and we didn't realize that we were as close to the end of the soundtrack as we thought we were, or as we didn't realize we were so close to the end of the soundtrack. Basically, we came back up and it was just dead air. There was nothing going on. The soundtrack had stopped playing, and we weren't sure how long the dead air had been. Luckily for us, this was back in the day of cassette tapes. We had decided to record ourselves doing this commentary and singing along to the Sound of Music on the radio to play for our roommate later when he got back. And so maybe he wouldn't ask us to cover his radio show again. and it only ended up being about 3 minutes of dead air at about, a little bit before, 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So no one noticed. We didn't get a phone call. Nobody called. Nobody alerted anyone. We made it through fine. No, we didn't get our licenses pulled or anything like that. But yeah, definitely 3+ minutes of completely dead air on the college radio station while we were out having a cigarette after having spent almost an hour singing along with and providing commentary over the Sound of Music soundtrack. We particularly had a good time with the Lonely Goat Herder song.
That's awesome. And by the way, you still remember that. Someone remembers that. Thank God the program director or the instructor didn't hear it.
Yeah. Well, I think actually my roommate, John, who was there with me that morning, I think he still has that cassette somewhere. I think he still has the recording of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, but
that's a good one, Tom.
In college, you do crazy stuff.
You know what? This made me think about something you brought up last week too, Tom, that we were supposed to reach out to people from last week to this week. So I'm wondering if Tom has stayed in touch with those college roommates. They're in his network, and this might be a good time to reach out to somebody. So one, are they in your network still, Tom? And did you do any of that reaching out to people last week?
Absolutely. They're in my network. And yes, I have reached out to some folks that I haven't talked to in a while, that have been dormant for a year or more. In some cases. So I've reached out to some folks. I've also I'm trying to be better about staying in touch with people who are in my network. And actually just yesterday, I didn't send a text. We have a group text between the three of us, the three roommates. We still talk to each other pretty often, pretty regularly. And I was going to send them a text because every few weeks to a month or so, we try to hop on a Zoom together and have a little Zoom happy hour and catch up with each other. So I was going to send them a text yesterday and see if they were around for a happy hour later this week or next. But yeah, I actually did just yesterday. I sent an email to somebody who I haven't spoken to in quite a while, who, as it turns out, by an odd coincidence, I met her through a networking organization local to me, and we connected on Facebook and LinkedIn, and she messaged me on Facebook and said, "Hey, how do you know this guy Mike?" And I said, "Well, I went to high school with Mike. Why?" And she said, "Oh, that's funny. Mike's my cousin." So just a random meeting. She works for the American Cancer Society in Dutchess County, and as it turned out, I went to high school with her cousin Mike, and he was a buddy of mine in high school. So small world. But anyway, yeah, I just emailed her yesterday to catch up and reconnect. So I did do it. I'm trying to be good.
Well done, man. I appreciate it. Good stuff. You mentioned last week, and the one thing I think it was that hit me so hard was there's that awkwardness when you reach out to whoever that you haven't talked to for a while, and to get over this awkwardness. But the thought that hit me was, well, they haven't reached out either. So when you reach out, everybody's thinking the same thing. So I did reach out to people, and I felt good about it and had some good conversations. And it was that thought right there. So anybody else in the room, reach out to anybody from last week to this week based on that. If you want to flash, go ahead. Julie gives a heart. Good job, Julie.
And I think the other thing too, Dom, that's important to remember is not only did they not reach out either, right? So it's not like you're at fault more than they're at fault or vice versa. There really is no fault, right? People drift apart for all kinds of reasons. It's not necessarily anybody's fault, right? Life happens. as the saying goes. But the other thing that people should do is like take a moment to just put yourself in their shoes, right? How often have you had somebody that you used to know, somebody you used to be connected with, right, reach out to you, or somebody you haven't heard from in a long time? How many times has somebody that you haven't spoken to in a long time reached out to you, and you've immediately thought to yourself, oh God, really? Ugh, I don't want to talk to them. What a pain. What did, like, I don't want to have to deal with this, right? Almost never. Almost never, right? That is very rarely the response, right? So the assumption should be that you're going to get the more common response, which is, oh, I haven't heard from them in a long time. This is really cool. Let me reconnect, right? And that's most likely the response that you're going to get when you reach out to an old connection, right? So assuming that they get the email, they reply back, most likely the response is going to be, hey, really great to hear from you. What's new in your world? So really not a lot to lose. I saw Dom mentioned we saw a bunch of hearts pop up there. I think John Jay, Dr. Tachi, you guys had some hearts. Did you reach out to some folks after last week?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good stories. Go ahead, Dr. Tachi.
Really good. Thanks, guys. way to help us navigate this room. Man, what a tough crowd. Go on.
Oh, do you want the actual stories?
Yeah,
Something, Dr. Tachi. Geez, since when did we say you weren't allowed to talk in this room? Geez, go on.
Yeah, no, I actually reached out to a few people. Like I said last week, I have a tendency sometimes to go through my contacts and see this was another good reason to go through them. And so I actually ended up speaking to a friend that I speak to periodically, but it was coming up on time that we should speak again. And so we had like a 2-hour conversation. So it ended up being really good, and we have some plans to do something like in April.
That's very cool. What about you, John? What was your story?
My big thing was, and Julie is down listening. I've been in touch with her several times. Also, Carrie Brett, I've talked to you several times. Brian Alves, I talked to very several times, and I had a great conversation yesterday or Monday with Favor. So, yeah, these are all people I've come in contact with recently. I've known on this app for a very long time, but came into contact recently at Creative Con. I'm trying to get better at freeing up time. That's the big issue. Time and life gets in the way. And there are some people from the far past that I've reached out to. We haven't communicated yet, but there's a couple that I do there. But the main thing is I want to maintain the lines of communication with these people because they're important to me.
That makes a ton of sense. I think one of the things, and I'm almost positive I mentioned this last week in the context of that conversation, but one of the things that always jumps out to me is my friend Carlo from high school, who's one of the best sort of networkers that I've ever known, who I actually sent a text to yesterday, and he just said, when somebody pops into my head, I reach out. I just send him a text. I drop him a line. Right. So like, he's like, that's how I keep in touch with so many people. If somebody pops into my head, if I see something that reminds me of somebody, I just drop it. I just drop a line and go, hey, saw this, thought of you. What's new? What's going on? I try to do that. I'm far from perfect with it, but I try to do it myself. I'm trying to be better at it, which I think is kind of the best you can hope for, right? Just always trying to improve. But I'm trying to be better about that and connecting with people and staying in touch with people, and just dropping a line when somebody pops into your head and you think about somebody, just dropping them a text or dropping them an email and saying, hey, what's up? Saw this, thought of you. What's new? Which is what Carlo does a lot of times. So, what about you, Dom? What do you think?
I think it's good stuff. I mean, it was your suggestion. I did it. I do try, and I enjoy it. Try to just message random people, random stuff. and hopefully, like, it could be a friend that I haven't seen for 18 years, and I see a Volkswagen drive down the street, and he's into Volkswagen bugs, and I'll send him a picture of a Volkswagen. That's it. But I still think about him. Like we're on different paths. I think about this story, the positivity bus. Sometimes, you guys ever heard that story? That there's people are on a journey with you, and sometimes they get on and off the bus. Sometimes they're on the bus the whole time. Sometimes they are on for a short period of time. So I think all our paths are interweaving. All right, let's get to Phil here. Not the smartest guys in the room. Phil, I met Phil, hung out with Phil in person. Phil's the coolest. Hey, Phil, man, you keeping in touch with people? How do you know you're on message when you're doing videos and stuff like that? What do you got for us?
Hey, everybody. So, yeah, I did reach out to an old friend, high school friend of mine that he's going through a few job challenges, 4 years from retirement, and just a chance for us to catch up and, hear his life's ups and downs. And it was really good. I think I gave him a friend's point of view of some decisions he's got to make about his career and how he wants to end it. So it was a really good call. I'm just so happy to do that. And it gave us a chance to plan a motorcycle trip for this summer. So that was pretty cool. But as far as the staying on point, for me, anytime I go live or let's say I recorded something on one of the socials, or for me particularly a live on Amazon, the shopping program, I always have a run a show in my head. And that run a show is whether it's just a couple notes on a piece of paper, or in Amazon, the run a show for me kind of is what I've put in my carousel of products that I'm going to talk about. If it's just a theme of products that I put in, maybe, DIY security cameras and a whole slew of them on Amazon, then I know what that is. But if it's a brand that I have a deal with, that I have commitment to show their product for X amount of time, or X amount of exposure on certain pieces of their product that they sent me, then that's gonna steer the run a show. But that always have a run a show that Amazon is gonna run about an hour, and I will make sure that I'm looking at engagement, engaging in the chat. But once I run through the products and I've run a show in my head of what it's supposed to be, and I know that the engagement is done, I'm done. It's time to shut the camera off. Knowing that in that case, that live is going to go recorded, and other people will loop back around later, and I can push people back to that live stream or that recorded stream now later for content. If it's IG or TikTok that I do an extended live on, again, run of show, I might do some tips on security, and I have exactly in my mind what point I want to get across. When the point is across, I'm done. Or whether it's a 90-second reel, I may know then I'm talking about a smoke detector, and I get that point across, and I'm done. That's how I keep myself on point. Is I stick to my run of show, and I always have one.
Love it, man. I'm hearing you. I appreciate it. This is good stuff. I run across this in the book business, that sometimes I'll read manuscript and wonder, where the hell is this going, or why did it go off the rails? I mentioned the story to Tom that somebody told me about they wanted to speak on stages, and then there was a story about their fiance shitting in a box and sending it to them. It applied in no way. And it was like, I'm always like looking for consumability, and people will tell me they want to speak on stages or something. And then I'll pick up content in their books that nobody is going to accept. Like that, if you wrote this, Lauren, Julie, I wonder if you come across this when you're reading manuscripts, where all of a sudden it just goes off the rails. And if you knew the goal was to help, to educate, to share 50 radio tips, to share media tips, to tell, well, how is this happening? What do you think about that? Brian, thoughts on stuff going off the rails like a book? Have you read any books that just went off the rails?
I several books that went off the rails, but I guess what gets me is the over explaining, taking 40 pages to explain a simple concept that could have been explained in 10 pages, but there was this need to have to almost impress you with the wording. I guess that's what gets to me. But I know I'm a kind of a bit of a bottom line type of person. But yeah, going off the rail, not a ton of that, but I have heard it in certain rooms more than I've read it. And I think that's because people all of a sudden let their emotions get in the way of their critical thinking sometimes. You would like to think when people putting it down in words that somebody would have caught it, but it doesn't always happen, as you well know. I'm complete.
Yeah, that's good stuff, Brian. And I do think, and I wanted to go down this path today. Like, there are a lot of rooms on this app that are off the rails, and so you go and like for me, okay, if I'm coming to learn something or learn about or hear about sports, and then all of a sudden it's like completely off the rails, I'm out. So Lauren, I'm going to go. Howard, I'm going to Lauren because she's in the book business. And then I'm coming back to you. So, Lauren, thoughts on a book going off the rails, a story going off the rails? Any suggestions, thoughts?
Yeah, so I tend to be really picky with like the books that I read. I'm a nonfiction chick to begin with, and so like if I just tend to be really, really picky with like any kind of content that I consume. And there was one book like earlier in the year that was brand new about like, I don't know, some kind of like murder in the Amish country or something. And I'm like, that is so unique. And I wanted to learn about it. But like the guy, like, I think I spent like I gave it like 80 pages worth of my attention. And the guy, it was like he was repeating like the same kind of information. And then when I went on, Goodreads and Amazon to see what other people had to say, it was all the same stuff of like, this guy needed like a serious edit, like one last like good edit just to get rid of so much fluff. And I don't like, I mean, I know that they have a story to tell, but it's just like, you have to be self-aware enough to know like when you're going to lose people, like at what point is it more for you versus the reader? And the way that I think about it is that if you're going to write a book, the first draft is absolutely for you. Like it's only for your eyes. It's going to be bad. The point is that it's just made. And then as you start editing and going through multiple drafts, it transitions from being about you to being about the reader and like what's going to be a payoff for them, what's going to be worth their attention, because books are it's a great form of entertainment, and it takes such a long time investment depending on like the format that you're reading it in. So I don't know, just like as a writer, as an author, it's just having, practicing self-awareness and knowing like what pieces are more for you and what pieces are there to benefit the reader. So those are my thoughts.
Good ones, Lauren. I always go back to this. What is the goal? Well, if your goal is to help this kind of person, or my goal is to speak on stages, if my goal is to help X person, businessman that wants to start business, my goal is to help people in recovery. My goal is to help people that have been through domestic violence. My goal is to help people that have been through rapes and other kinds of traumas like that. Well, there's a component where you can tell the story a bit, but if you're trying to help, you can't be triggering people. You can't be, if the message is so raw and so intense that they have to put the book down and can't go back to it. Well, did you really accomplish your message? And so I'm in this world all the time where I see people that get, like you're saying, Lauren, they go off with too much detail, or they go off telling facts that, okay, you could tell me one instance, but you just too much detail there. So Tom, did you have something to say? Then we're going to go to Howard here.
Well, this conversation reminded me of one that we've had at some point before. I know because I've used this anecdote before, but I often I talk about this with a lot of folks, but I often really put a lot of value on sort of outside perspective and outside eyes and fresh eyes, as I often call it. So for better or for worse, my wife Becky has to look at most everything that kind of comes out of my work before it goes to anyone else. She's sort of the filter that I put a lot of things through. And one of the things that, you know, she will turn around and say, I don't think this needs to be here. I don't think you need to say that, I don't think you need to say that, make that point again. It was clear the first time. You can cut that part, you can trim this, things like that. And it reminds me of Lauren put in the chat, kill your darlings, which made me think of this adage, this dark adage that we had in television that we used to use was, you know, sometimes you have to kill the baby. And it would be a part of a show or part of an episode that you would put a lot of work and thought into, that you really were attached to, that you really enjoyed, that you thought was funny or fun or entertaining. And then you would inevitably get a note back from the network saying, lose this part of the show, right? Cut this. And, you know, sometimes you just have to kill the baby. It doesn't matter, you know, how much time or effort or energy you put into it, how much you care about it. If it doesn't serve the story, if it doesn't move the needle forward, if it doesn't move things forward, then sometimes you just got to let it go. So, you know, I agree. I think, you know, if it's not, if you've made the point, then you've made the point and you can move on. You know, DS was talking about some people will just fill pages, right? Just write extra, like say the same thing, reiterate the same thing 7 times in different ways in order to fill pages to hit a page count, you know, whether in their book, whether that's, you know, 200 or 250 or whatever the case may be. You know, I kind of don't see the value in that either. I think at the end of the day, if you've made the point, land the plane and move on. Speaking of which, my plane has just landed. Let's move on.
All right, let's do it. We got to meet Howard, our friend Howard here. Let's see. Howard, he's on Twitter, X, but it still has a bird, which is weird that they still this link still has a bird. Anyway, passionate. Hey. Hold on, Howard. Let me give you a little bio. Passionate about helping and mentoring people in need. Passionate about the pursuit of delivering an extraordinary customer service. Seems like a good dude. What do you got for us, Howard?
Yeah. Hey, Dominic, thanks for inviting me up on stage. I'll be quick. As a co-founder of a natural products company, we're an emerging brand and growing quite rapidly. The discussion this morning, I just want to let you know, really has helped me because storytelling, telling the story about our brand, obviously there's key components to it, but we also have different targets, whether, you know, we're talking to end consumers, whether we're talking to, call it, medical professionals. So we're always figuring out okay, what's most relevant for the target market, and that's consistent with our brand. And I'll just wrap it with this, is that I'm fortunate I was invited to be a guest on a podcast this morning, which is going to be recorded the next hour. And you definitely are reminding me, and thank you for the messaging. Whatever I'm going to be saying, I'm going to be cutting my time in half and getting right to the point. So I just wanted to share and say I really appreciate the content. Every time I drop in this room, there's always something to be learned, and I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Howard, man, spot on, and we wish you luck in the business and on the podcast today. Get out there and share that message. Be interesting. And John, Dr. Tachi, our Brian, Bill, podcast host out there. I'm in this belief that if you are interesting, if you have stories, that people will want to find you. They will look at your bios. They will look for your other things. Flash, if you want to jump in on that, what say you to the room here? What do you got on that thought? Go on, John.
Yeah. And I wound up having a discovery call with all my future guests first. And it's about their story first and foremost. Everybody, I don't want to say everybody, that's a big jump. A lot of people are like, I've got this to promote. I'm an expert in this. I know this. I've done that. I'm like, no one cares. I hate to break it to you. No one cares. But get right to your story and have them fall in love with your story about why you became an expert in this, and they'll follow you. It's just that simple. Your story is your power, not what you've done, not what you know. And perfect example of this is Brian, who's up on stage. He has a wealth of life experiences, but his story is so captivating. It makes you want to follow him to find out more. And the more that people stress away from that, the weaker response is on my show, and the more likely it's not going to happen because I just don't have a unlimited time to create new content for people when they don't want to focus on what the format of the radio show is.
Interesting. Go on, Swift.
No, John, thank you for the kind words, but that's a great reminder because when I started in social media, I so shied away from my story because I thought it was more self-serving, and I thought just the opposite of what you said. And it's so true. It so is about your story, and I don't know why I thought that was just too self-serving to really lead with that, but it is about the story. And I've learned that from being in rooms like this with all of you. So thank you for that, and it's a great reminder. It is so about the story. I'm complete.
I think it's also, thanks for that, Brian. And yeah, what John was saying made me think of this, right? I think it's a good reminder to people that no one is ever going to love your baby as much as you love your baby, right? Whether that's your story, your experience, the work that you've done in the past, your accomplishments that you're proud of, right? Whatever you want it to refer to, right? I'm not actually talking about babies, just to be clear, because what I'm about to say would probably upset people if I was. But no one's ever going to love your baby as much as you do. In fact, some people might think your baby is kind of ugly. So what you have to remember is that people don't care about the things that you're proud of the same way you do. They don't think about them the same way you do. And so what you need to approach with instead is a story about your baby that endears your baby to the audience, right? So tell the story about how the situation, the baby, so to speak, came to be, right? Tell the story about raising that child, about bringing them up in the world, right? If you're talking about your business, your organization, tell the story of how your organization came to be where it is today. Don't just list the things you sell, right? Because nobody cares as much. And don't talk about how you do it. Tell the story of how you ended up where you are today, right? That's really the difference. But just remember that nobody's ever going to love your baby as much as you do. You have to tell them a story to endear your baby, whether it's your organization, your past accomplishments, your career, whatever the case may be, to the audience you're speaking with. So yeah, endear them through storytelling.
Tom, I put in the comments, Tom loves baby analogies. God, get
He's the baby master.
Yeah, every analogy goes back to babies. What the hell?
I mean, maybe it's just because we've got one on the way, and it's
Okay.
I got babies on the mind as we're getting ready to welcome one of our own. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why.
Okay, go on.
I'll jump in really quick point here, and this is something everybody can do. Look up Aesop's, or I pronounced it wrong, Aesop's Fables, and look at when it was written. Ready? Between 620 and 564 BC, and yet it still performs. So the storytelling is really, really powerful.
Yeah, well, we can. Yeah, I'll see your Aesop's Fables, and we'll go to anthropology and go all the way back to the days of cave paintings. But there are many anthropologists that actually believe that storytelling, that we are genetically predisposed to appreciate, to like, to enjoy stories, and use storytelling as a tool, because it is one of the things that many anthropologists believe enabled us to move from sort of nomadic hunter-gatherers towards a more organized, cooperative society like what we live in today, where different people have different jobs and different skill sets and contribute different things to the community. And part of the reason is that we were able to do that is because storytelling and our affinity for it enabled us to pass down generational knowledge, right? So everybody wasn't starting from scratch and having to figure everything out on their own. Storytelling enabled us to share lessons from the past with future generations so that they didn't have to repeat everything that was done before, right? We know that time tends to be cyclical, and there are ways that sort of violate that idea. But generally speaking, like, we don't have to learn the hard way which berries we can safely eat, because our ancestors figured that out, and they can teach us which berries we can eat, right? And so on and so forth. You can extrapolate that on down the line, but that's the idea behind it, that many anthropologists believe that we're actually genetically predisposed, that it's literally baked into our DNA to like stories.
Good stuff, Tom. It's interesting when Howard was talking. Howard, it was health products, right? Tom's dog started barking there. Howard, health products, right? Oh, Dr. Tachi, John, was it health products he was talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm back.
Yeah. Was it health products, Howard?
Yeah, it's natural oral care products.
Okay.
Wash breast sprays.
Okay. So if you're going on a podcast, what is interesting to me, and one product might change lives and all that kind of things like that. I wonder why Howard is so passionate about it. So if I could clearly and concisely let people know why I'm so passionate, I'm passionate because I saw my grandfather go. My grandfather worked in the coal mine and sucked up so much of these fumes that because I want my kids to live in a world where there's not chemicals like Rachel Carson set out to do all those years ago when she wrote Silent Spring. If you knew, if you could make that, and I don't know what that answer is, and once you told that story, I'm sure there is something. If you didn't just get into this to make $1, and if you did, like, I got a friend that is in some business now. He's about to sell off to financiers and stuff for about $1 billion. He got in it so he could feed people. And he says, when I sell for $1 billion, I'm going to feed a lot of people. So he is in it to make money, but it was really at this root to feed millions of people. That's what he thinks he can do with it. So Howard, good luck to you. I am telling Howard it would be so interesting, Tom, because I know you stepped away for a second, if he could get down to the root of that story, why he's so passionate about those health products. It's because of this. It's because of that. It's because I want to live in a better world. It's because my parents went through this. I saw this struggle, whatever. John Jay, would that be a story that would do all right on the show or something like that?
Yeah, I think that the reason why, the first thing I would lead with is what's the advantage for the consumer? Why should they listen, not try to buy? Why should they even continue listening? That's the most important thing. Because they don't do that, you can't accomplish anything. Then go into a little bit about the why. Is so important. Why he does what he does today, and then lastly, how people can get more information. If they're really interested, they'll follow you. They'll search it out.
No, I really appreciate the feedback and input. Thank you so much.
Good stuff, man. Okay, it's that time. We're about to get to you, Beth. Dr. Tachi's still here. We're gonna show. This is show and tell time. Okay, so for our live streamers, if you're not live streaming, you got to get live streaming or find a replay so you can see this. So I always wanted to open a restaurant. So for years and years, I wanted to open a restaurant. I thought about going to the Army to learn how to cook. My mom didn't really let me cook at home. So in school, I'd be in like 6 cooking classes, and I hung out at the bars with my dad in the 80s. That's what that was normal in the 80s. So I love my dad. I hung out and ate beef jerky at every bar around. So I knew that I wanted to open a restaurant someday. So I knew that I loved sports. So I wanted to have sports on the walls of my restaurant. So when I was about 18, 20, 21, going to games and things like that, I would collect, I'm covering this up for where this story is going to go. I would collect bobbleheads and things like that. So when I would go to local games, like my buddies would all be drinking and want to go up to the bars and be dead drunk, I'd be walking down the streets down the rows picking up bobbleheads, and I would leave like with all this memorabilia from the sports game. And this is one of these things. And the reason I'm covering this up is because now that I am in storytelling, this gentleman right here who was a legend, his team came to me and a friend and asked us about writing a screenplay for him about his story. So we're not there yet. We're just in talks, and who knows what could happen. Maybe nothing happens. But so long ago, I picked this little bobblehead up and put it on a shelf over there for different reasons. And now it's maybe comes full circle in a different way. So here's the guy. You don't recognize his face, so you don't even know. So that be that. What do you think, Tom? Tom's
I have
like,
no
wasn't
idea who
ready.
that was.
Good. That was the point. I can't tell you who it was because then you'd know I'm talking to this guy about this thing and he might go a different direction. Just talk. That's all. Tom doesn't like it. All right, we're moving on.
I don't know. I must I feel like I missed something. I missed something.
You shouldn't know who it is. All right, never mind.
I thought you were building up to reveal who it was.
No, I'm not revealing. I'm telling you full circle how you can figure it out on your own. You don't need to know who it is. That's not part of the story.
May
All
I
right.
just say the show and tell part is always my favorite part
Tell-
of the show because it always ends up like this, where Tom is like bewildered.
Okay, here. Then you can see this side of him. Here we go. Famous player that I have bobblehead of. No, there you go. It was a bad story. Go on. I'll work on it for another time. I'm not perfect.
I'm not saying it was a bad story. I was taking responsibility. I said maybe I missed something. Maybe I missed a part of the story.
Chris says shit, show and tell. I'm sorry. I probably broke all principles of knowing where I wanted to go with the story I told. So forget it. I did it. Bottom line is story, bobblehead I picked up years ago. Now I could be working with the guy to tell his story. But that wasn't how I told it. So should have told it better. Okay,
I mean, that's cool. I like that. And now I understand why you didn't say who it was.
There you go. That was
Okay.
Okay, so you might have missed some of the story when I was telling it because I thought I said that, but that is the.
But yeah, like I said, I took responsibility. I said I might have missed something.
Yeah, but if you got to explain it, it wasn't good. Chris says hook, shit show, show and tease. He doesn't like it. Dr. Tachi said it went off the rails. So there we go. Okay, Beth. We were talking,
but hold on. But Chris he just said now he wants to know who it was. Like you got him, you hooked him, you got his interest. So it was a good story.
Okay, and I will tell you my point of this story. This famous person, everybody would want to tell the story from one lane. There's no way I think the story should be told like that. Okay, so. Coming to me, I think, yeah, that's super cool, super amazing. Nobody's ever done it, but I don't think the story should be told that way. I think it needs to be told a whole different way. And so that might turn somebody off, but okay, go on.
I love it. Come at it sideways, man. You know, I'm always saying like, I like to come at problems sideways. I like to approach them from a novel direction. Right. So like, I love it. Come at it sideways, man.
Yeah.
Don't do it head on.
Yeah, right. Duh. We can do it head on, but let's go. Okay, Beth, we're talking storytelling. You go to a networking event, you do a live video, you're writing something. How do you stay on message and not go off the rails like me? Go on, Beth.
Well, good morning. Dom, you have my mind's going around with that story. But yeah, something that was just said was show and tell, right? First, you show them what you're going to do, then you tell them, this is what I did. And I love that theory because I think there's too many people out there that tell their story way before they should ever tell their story. And then they're disappointed that they don't get what they want in life. But a second question I got for you, Dom, did you ever open up that restaurant?
Come on, Beth. I opened up a restaurant. I I did $500,000 in business, and I also lost half a million in a year, and also lost $500,000 2 years later. So, and I had cool memorabilia all over the walls. Tom saw some in my basement. I took him on a tour. I don't know if he saw the boxes, but he did see a lot of memorabilia throughout the basement. So yes, I opened it up. Go on, Tom.
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, you did show me the boxes of stuff, yeah, and you pointed out. I got to see all the stuff on the walls in your office, including the stuff that we can't see on camera right
Yeah.
now, because they're covered. But yeah, tons of sports memorabilia all over the restaurant. I'm sure there was. I mean, I never saw the restaurant, but I can imagine based on the boxes and the way your office looks, there must have been.
Yeah, I lost some of it too. So and Beth, I will tell you the one thing that this is my not proudest accomplishment, but I will share this with everybody here. Whatever it is that you want to go for. Like, so I lived my life up until 23. I opened. 3 years later, I was closed. I lived my whole life wanting to open a restaurant at some point. I did it. I went for it. And I don't regret, although I went bankrupt and I was on a government repayment plan. I had to pay back taxes, all that kind of thing. Lost a house, lost a car. I went for it. So 30 years later, I don't know, it's been 20 years or 25 years, however long it's been since I closed. I don't regret having went for it. I went all out. I had a paper route. I stayed up longer hours. I got second jobs. I was a basketball referee during. I did whatever I thought I could do to keep it open. You know, I went from like, oh yeah, everybody's coming to the roads went under construction and I had to close. But I don't sit here 20 years later and think, oh, like I'm so sad I did it or I'm so sad that happened. No, I'm glad I went for it, and I'm not going to be a 60-year-old man someday or on my deathbed and say, I wish I would have went for it. I wish I would have went for it. I did. And that's how it went. And I moved on to bigger and better things. So what do you think, Beth? Beth says, I wouldn't have eaten there. It was an American Italian restaurant, homemade meatballs, homemade pierogies, homemade lasagna. Go on, Beth.
You can get me to eat in any restaurant in Pittsburgh. And I don't even care if I see a rat like run out the back door. As long as my food doesn't have any rat hair in it, I'm good to go. I'll eat in Pittsburgh.
There you go. That's good stuff. All right. Not the smartest guys in the room. Peter, Carrie, what's going on? Lois, if you want to come up. Chris, love to see you. Love to see you on Clubhouse now. Chris and Lauren are somewhat new to Clubhouse. DS, glad you asked us some questions today. Good having you here. If you all would follow the room, check out the room. You may see us some other places as well. Tom, it's about that time. You ready to wrap up for us? Tom's like, no, you didn't prepare me for this.
Not really.
Yeah,
Honestly,
okay.
don't have anything planned. But you know, since when has that ever stopped me from?
Yeah,
talking?
hey, well, get us to a point to figure it out, and then get to a point. So don't just blab.
Okay, thanks for the help. Thanks for the pep talk. Are you ready to wrap up? No. Okay, figure it out.
Side note, I have to say that I'll give you one more minute to think about it. So you guys know I do Bikes and Hikes show. We air in 6 states. Armstrong Regional Cable. They support us great. I'm getting to meet Lieutenant Governor tomorrow. We are number 2 in like how many views like on all these they're in the 6 states. The show that we're losing to, it reminded me of this when Tom was talking about his 6 a.m. and the college show. The show that we can't overcome that airs on every network is the church that airs on Sunday morning on every station. So they have us beat in viewership and we can't get there. So sorry, Tom. That's what now you can do your wrap up.
I still have no idea what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah,
I don't see how that would have helped me other than buying time.
Yeah, that's all.
But then I would have had to not listen to what you were saying in order to use it to buy time. So yeah, I mean, thanks. I appreciate the sentiment, but it doesn't really help. Chris says God gets good ratings, which is true. just ask Joel Osteen, who buys time on NBC affiliates all over the country every week. Can only imagine how many millions of dollars that costs. But it obviously raises more money than it costs, or else he wouldn't keep doing it. And he also wouldn't have a church in an old stadium. But but yeah, I think we started the room talking about. I'll try to bring us full circle, right? So we started the room today talking about sort of ethos and core ethos and how important mission is to an organization and what the end goals are. And I think, I started talking about because Boeing was kind of on my mind. I recommend for anybody who hasn't seen it. It's a good show generally, but check out John Oliver's show Last Week Tonight on HBO. And if you don't subscribe to HBO, they put out pieces of the show on YouTube every week. So you can check it out there as well. And I would suggest watching his piece on Boeing. It was really interesting, very well researched, very well written, excellently delivered by John. But in short summary, Boeing was founded by an engineer. Boeing, I forget his first name, but Boeing, the namesake of the company, was an engineer himself. It was founded with an ethos, an engineering ethos, and the mission was to deliver the best possible products, aeronautical products for their customers. And that was what drove that company for a long time, until, in fact, there was even a saying among pilots that if it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. That pilots were so enthralled with the quality that came out of that organization, that company, and its factories. They had so much faith and confidence in it that they would fly it above anything else. And so that was the track. That was the core ethos of Boeing. They were an engineering first company for most of their history until they merged with McDonnell Douglas, and the leadership at McDonnell Douglas had a different ethos, a different mission, and that mission was to return the highest possible profits to shareholders and investors that they could. And that changeover in leadership, there was a sort of internal struggle between the existing leadership of Boeing and the new leadership of McDonnell Douglas that was left after the merger. The leadership at McDonnell Douglas ended up winning out. They shifted the focus of Boeing away from that engineering ethos, that product-driven, quality-driven approach to the work that they were doing, which ultimately led to, and John Oliver does a really great job of laying this all out in sort of stark detail, but ultimately led to the 737 MAX disasters and groundings that we saw in the last 5 or 10 years. Some of the instances we've seen most recently with some of the 737 models, including the door blank getting pulled out of the 737 Alaska Airlines 737 that we all saw recently in the news, the wheel falling off of the 787 Dreamliner on takeoff, unfortunately not hurting anybody. But it's clear to me that you can really see Boeing is a really startling, clear example of how the mission of an organization really does dictate the actions of the organization and the eventual outcomes. And the shift away from that engineering ethos ultimately has cost people their lives in pursuit of profits. And so I just want to wrap up by saying this and reminding folks to strive towards this. As Dominick said earlier on in the conversation, boil down your mission to something that's beyond reproach. Whatever it is that you're doing, make sure that at its core, it is beyond reproach. And what that means is that it's something that no reasonable person would argue against, right? As I said before, my mission of working to humanize the world of business through better communications, humanizing the world of business, I believe is beyond reproach. I don't think any reasonable person would argue against that. So please try to do the same in your businesses, in your organizations, in the work that you do. every day, whether it's for a personal brand or a larger company, try to make sure that the core mission is beyond reproach, because ultimately it really does matter in very real terms to very real people. It's important. So please remember that and make sure that the work you do is to make the world a better place. And that's where I will land the metaphorical plane for this week. So thank you everybody for being here. Thanks, Dom, for throwing me under the bus with the wrap up. Appreciate you, buddy. And appreciate all of you for joining us week in and week out here. Not the smartest guys in the room. Until next Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, I am Tom for Dom. This is Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. We love you guys, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.